And
The views and opinions expressed by the On the Spot with David Rodgers show are solely based on the show's guests, hosts, and family, and we are not responsible, nor does the show reflect the opinions and views of any of our sponsors in any way. These broadcasts are presented and made possible by the On the Spot with David Rodgers staff in the hopes that it will be entertaining and informative to our viewers and
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to On the Spot with David Rodgers. I'm your host, David Rodgers. To my left over here, we've got our historian in our governmental list, Mr. Byron Bagwell, who's my co-host. Producing the show tonight is Super Dave Holland, Daredevil, right? Something to that effect. And to my right, back in the back there, is our director, Mr. Michael Heater. Mr. Mitchell Gunner, our local co-host. Gavin can't be with us tonight because he is in St. Augustine enjoying time with his family. Nice. So, Mitchell, if you're tuning in, we hope you're enjoying the time off there. We have a very special show tonight for you guys, ladies and gentlemen. As you all well know, we have been doing interviewing candidates during this election time and this election year. We got the primaries coming up in August, and we've already interviewed Byron, Sheriff Gordon Smith, and now we are in beautiful Keystone Heights, Florida, where you make your home as well.
Yes, sir.
And we are honored to be here at Mr. Gavin Rollins' home, right here in beautiful Keystone Heights, Florida. We can see the lake right over here, Keystone Lake.
Oh, that's my type. That's my type of, you know, it's like my type of living.
Yes, it is, and because you live on the lake as well, and we're glad to be here. Gavin is running for the 3rd Congressional District seat that Ted Yohost is going to be leaving vacant. And again, welcome into the show tonight. My name is David Rodgers here at Mr. Gavin Rollins' home. Gavin, just say hello to everybody and tell everybody where you live at. Of course, we've already said Keystone, but tell everybody where you're at and what you're running for, and just a little bit about yourself before we get into some tougher questions.
Yeah, before the tough questions start, well, we're in my house right now, so I literally live here. But I also, this is within the city limits of Keystone Heights, and I went to Keystone Heights High School. I served on the Keystone Heights City Council and now serve as the Clay County Commissioner for this area. So I represent Keystone Heights, Middleburg, Clay Hill, Kingsley Lake, McRae, the western and rural portion of Clay County. As a county commissioner, I'm in my 2nd term. And I also am a military officer. I'm in the National Guard and have served in the National Guard for 13 years. I'm a captain currently, and most recently was activated for COVID response. And before that, a couple other things, hurricanes and a deployment to East Africa. And then I'm also a history teacher. And so I'm a little nervous, though, if we have the constitutional expert, if he's going to put me on the spot here. But I love,
no pun intended on that.
Exactly. Yeah. Intentional. But I love history, especially American history. And it's not a perfect history, but it's an amazing history of a country continually striving to become a more perfect union. I think we're going to talk about some of that, but we truly have a remarkable nation, a great republic. And the reason I'm running is very simple. When I got back from deployment in 2017, I served under President Trump in a combat zone. I realized that our freedom is under attack from Washington, D.C., whether it's communist China trying to infiltrate our country, whether it's liberals, specifically the radical left, trying to undermine the foundations of our nation. We need people who go to Washington not because they want to drink the Kool-Aid there and become just another politician. We need people who view it as a deployment to a war zone to do battle for our values, and that's my philosophy. I'll go up there and do battle on behalf of our community and our country, and then return home to this beautiful area that I call home. So that's the general overview. I know we're going to get into a lot of specific questions.
Well, and that's a good overview, Gavin. And I tell you, you sound like you've got a lot of good experience serving your community right now. I'm familiar with all those places, as we all are. We either drive through them or we do business through them and stuff. And we can see some of that hard work that you've already done. Me being a former military member myself, I was part of the U.S. Navy, and I didn't retire. I didn't retire yet.
Thank you for your service.
And thank you for your service, I was going to say as well. I'll be retired at 62 because I finished off my last part of my career in the reserves. You know how that goes. I have to wait until I believe it's 62 now before I can start drawing that pension.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was an honor to serve, and I would do it again. So I want to thank you for your service that you've given us.
What did you do in the Navy?
I was a flight engineer on P3s.
Awesome.
So I was stationed at NES Jacksonville.
Searching for Soviet subs, right?
Hey, you know it. And then, of course, after the Cold War, you know, they became hurricane hunters and then use them for drug ops planes and things like that. So, but they're still running strong. And I just found
out of Keystone Airport, even.
Well, we never landed there, but yes, you do have
they have a flight operation where they're teaching foreign allied nations specifically that are our friends how to use those, because we have a more modern version of that, the P8s, obviously, and so. A neat thing a lot of people probably don't even realize here in Keystone Heights. So.
Right, and you're exactly right. And but I want to thank you again for your service, as we all have. And I know that Byron, we always talk about that, don't we, Byron, about wanting to serve our great country. And we've got a guy right here that's definitely worthy of being a candidate for that Congress seat. There's no doubt about it. So we're going to get into some questions right now. Again, thank you for joining us. Want to welcome Austin Stevens on, Noah Gibson, Stephanie Smith's on, Allison Heiss is on. Byron, we probably got a load of them on there as well. You want to say hello to a few people while you got them right here?
Yeah, Mr. Jerry Feltner is on.
Wow.
David, never mind. Rodgers is on.
Is he? Okay.
And Austin Stevens is on.
All right. Well, we welcome in your questions, that's for sure. So anything that you want to ask Mr. Gavin Rollins, please do. We're going to be monitoring those questions as well as we have questions that we're going to ask as well. So let's go ahead and start this thing off, and let's go ahead and just get to the meat and the potatoes.
Perfect.
So with 10 Republicans running for the primary in the 3rd Congressional District, it's a crowded field, isn't it?
It is.
And
traveling circus.
Yes, it is. What distinguishes you from the other candidates?
Well, I think in a campaign, politicians will promise the world, and we all know this. We've seen this happen, and they say Trump is the exception, where he actually has done what he says he'll do, and it drives the liberal media crazy. But politicians will say, I'm going to do this and this and this. And you really just don't know, because they can say whatever they want. And a lot of them have high-paid consultants who say this, say this, say this, and they have a checklist approach. For me, it's different. I have a proven record. I'm a battle-tested leader. So when I say I'm going to fight alongside President Trump, it's because I've actually fought underneath him in a combat zone. I'm not just using that as a term. I've literally fought overseas. When I say I'm going to defend the Constitution, I've taught the Constitution to students in the classroom. So I understand it and will follow it. When I talk about fighting for our values at the local level, I've stood up for the Second Amendment as a commissioner. We made Clay County a Second Amendment sanctuary. We pushed to allow our employees to be able to conceal carry on the job so that they could protect themselves. I led the effort for term limits in Clay County, and a number of other things, voted against multiple tax increases, and then worked to reduce government that was outdated and in some cases no longer useful, and we reduced some of those organizations. So I have a proven battle-tested record, and the other candidates are just talking about what they might or hope to do, and if you just don't know. It's a gamble, but with me, you're going to have battle-tested leadership.
And I'm glad that you said that, and you just talked about President Trump right there, and you serving not under him, but with him, really. I mean, as he's in his term right here and looking for his second term as well. You were talking about some of the things that you've done to change your community and where you serve at. What is some of the other things that you are working on? I know you talked about some of the things that you've done and you put in place. What are you working on currently that you're still trying to do before you get elected to the seat?
Well, one of the things we just worked on is a Buy America policy, preference policy. And so the Clay County has $350 million budget, and we purchase a lot of things. And so what we have said is we're going to prioritize buying American goods, because that, for a number of reasons, that makes sense. And then another thing we've done is a ban on certain Chinese electronics, because a lot of people don't realize, some probably do, but the Chinese have embedded in many cases, the Communist Chinese Party is really the one controlling this. They've embedded backdoors into some of their networks and systems, and then governments buy that, and that's just an open case for them to be able to spy on us. And I'm an Army intelligence officer, and not on my watch. You're not, and so
Amen.
That's what we're not going to allow that to happen in Clay County. So that's the thing we're pushing for, and then just continuing to serve needs. I always tell people. People think sometimes being an elected official is glamorous and that type of thing. I still get text messages or calls. My trash can didn't get picked up, and you got to deal with that. You got to make sure that happens. And so, deal with that. Sometimes you're out there meeting with folks, and roads obviously are a big challenge in this area. And but yeah, the work continues and I'm the only actual current elected official running. And so I have that experience of working with our community, and certainly not a career politician. I mean, I've taught in the classroom, deployed overseas, but do have some experience in terms of serving the community. And that's what it is. It has to be service. If somebody wants to go to D.C. just because they want a pin on their sleeve or they think it's membership into some country club, that's the wrong answer. It's a deployment to work on behalf of the people.
Wow, and that's a great answer. Byron, I know you wanted to follow up.
How many times have I said it's about the people, it's not about the politicians? They work for us.
Right.
And a person that understands that goes up there is going to work for us instead of...
I know one of the things that I've heard about you and that I really like about you is you're very personable. I hear that you get out and you talk with people. Like you were saying, if somebody didn't get their trash can emptied, you're making those calls and stuff. And I can tell with your personality, just for a little bit here, but I can tell how you are with the people and who you serve for. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those calls that you get, and how you interact with some of our people?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things I've pledged to do is, if I have the honor of representing this community, it'll be servant-based leadership. And the team, a member of Congress gets to hire a team around them, and they do a lot of the work too.
Right.
And one of the things I've vowed is I want to send that team through either Chick-fil-A customer service training, Publix, one of the high premier levels, because I think they need to understand constituent service. Taking care of the constituents is key. And then I'm going to have a dedicated veteran service person who is dedicated to handling claims of our veterans, because one of the things I've worked on as a commissioner is we built a 5-county coalition to try to tackle veteran suicide.
Right.
It's a crisis. We've lost more veterans to suicide than to combat. And because there's some of the challenges that you deal with, and firefighters have some similar challenges in the things they see and deal with, and just that high level of intensity. And so one of the things we have to do is take care of our veterans, and I'll have a dedicated staff member focused on doing that. But it's about service. It's not just about making a vote or being on a news channel or that type of thing, the flashy stuff. It's the rolling up your sleeves, the hard work out there sweating.
And I hear that about you quite a bit. Go ahead.
I was doing a silent protest the last 3 weeks on the show about that. 22 a day.
Yeah, 22 a day.
I appreciate that.
22 a day.
Way far too many, and it's 22 push-ups. So
push-ups right now. No. But we can if you like.
No, let's not do that.
No, I don't want to
outdo that. Not compared to him.
No, not compared to him right now.
I did want to say one thing about something that he said, and it was a little while ago. There are a lot of people out there that when somebody that's from the right side of the aisle says something about China,
right,
it's automatically disqualified.
Right.
But when you're hearing something from an Army intelligence officer, you really should listen to it.
Yeah.
Because China is actually doing the things that people are saying they are doing. They are not our friends, guys. They really are not.
And a lot of the riots and Antifa and some of the radical elements that are causing destruction, not the peaceful protesters, but the radical elements to it, I think that they're funded by the Chinese Communist government and others. And again, I'm not going to reveal classified information and I'm not read on to certain programs right now. I do have a current top secret security clearance, but I'm not read on and wouldn't obviously share that in this format. But I just generally know the threat that China poses, and honored to have a professor who's a Chinese American who grew up in China and really the challenge there is the Communist Party of China is not the legitimate government of China. They have co-opted power, and they will not give it up. And they're really a mob. It's a mafia group that just is ruling the country, and the Chinese people suffer just as much.
Sure.
And they have horrendous atrocities. But it's not simply what's happening in China. It's what's happening here. They are attempting to squash free speech here through, if you tweet against China, in some cases, they go to your employer and try to get you fired and say you can't do business in China if you don't fire this guy. They did that to a Marriott employee. They're Chinese students who come over here. They're monitored through the Confucius Institutes. I could go on and on about, but suffice to say, we have to have someone who understands the threat China poses and stands up to it, because they really are one of the greatest threats we face. We face a lot of internal threats too from the radical left, but China is definitely an external and in some cases internal threat that we face.
Want to go to another question here. Again, you're joining us on the spot with David Rodgers. I'm your host, David Rodgers. Right here we got Mr. Gavin Rollins running for Ted Yoho's seat here. Another question here. You are running to replace Ted Yoho, who is stepping down because he committed to an 8-year term.
Yep.
What would you do differently than Congressman Yoho?
Well, I don't view it differently as much as carrying the torch for a while. Someone once said that public service isn't just, it's not a sprint, it's a relay race. And so I see it as him passing me the baton and then I carry on, because he's actually been really great and strong on China. He's stood up for agriculture and been a voice for agriculture, been a man of integrity and gotten a lot done. So I would continue on his legacy, and that's, I think he's staying neutral in the race, but I think that's why his son and daughter, Tyler Yoho and Katie Yoho, have publicly supported me. His son has publicly endorsed me and said he thinks I'll do the best job carrying on his dad's legacy. Right. And so that's an honor, of course, and I think he's done a great job, and I'll continue on in that servant-based leadership, and then also continue to stand up to those threats as he has. So,
excellent answer. That is great. How has your, and you explained this a little bit while ago, how has your service in the military helped prepare you for to go and run for Congress?
Well, number one of the most solemn responsibilities of Congress is the power to declare war. And I can assure you this, Bill Bowe and I have had lots of conversations about that. He's a Vietnam veteran. And what we've talked about is if you make that commitment, there has to be a very, very clear and present danger to the U.S. and U.S. citizens. There has to be a clear objective and a clear exit strategy. We have gotten into far too many wars where we don't know what the exit strategy is. And our soldiers do great, our sailors, our joint military team does an amazing job. But the politicians that are directing that war don't really know where the direction of it is. And I vow to you that I will never send soldiers or sailors or airmen or Marines, military personnel into a war zone unless it's a clear threat to the United States with a clear exit strategy. And they have to have that. And I think that's a very important and solemn duty. And then also the threats we face, whether it's cybersecurity, it's the fight of the future. And then I also just think the team mentality. There's no soldier that does it alone, and you can't go out there and go at it alone. And so that team mindset of building a team, and that's critical in a combat zone, and it's critical in Congress. But it's also critical to be willing to stand alone if necessary. And that's what I always say as a commissioner. I've been willing to stand alone when necessary, and I have. I've taken some 4-to-1 votes on some things. Impact fees, so when you're building a new house, if you have to pay an impact fee, I voted against that, so don't get mad at me. But but I took a 4-to-1 vote on that, and then I've been willing to able to build a coalition on some things too, and so term limits and Second Amendment sanctuary and various other things. We've been able to build a coalition, and my fellow commissioners have joined me in those efforts. So.
The military, definitely team building skills for sure. Lots of team building. Can't do, there's no I in team, of course, as you're always saying. So, but there is times that you will need to stand up, like you said, where you'll have to make some decisions where the military background that you have will help you in making those individual decisions as well.
Well, back here's the 1st platoon I commanded, and a great group of soldiers there, engineers, and when you're in a command leadership role, I've been a company commander in charge of 125 soldiers in 2 different locations with millions of dollars of equipment.
Right.
And you have to make tough decisions, and you have to live with those, and some of them are life and death, tough, challenging decisions, and the weight of that helps you realize, and a lot of people, I've got a baby face, so people go, how old are you? Are you 12? And I'm actually 33. But I think it's the life experiences you've had that are critical, because there's a lot of people who are a lot more senior in years but might not have had the experiences, and then there's some people who, I think life experiences matter in the background you have, and that have helped shape who I am and what I'll be in Congress if I have that honor.
This is what this is all about here, for you to get yourself out here and tell not only our listening audience, but the listening audience that you're bringing on as well about you and yourself, and some people that don't know you is going to get a chance to know you after we do this show. And I'm already impressed of what I'm hearing about you. I definitely love the military background and the military aspect that you have. I think that's going to help you if you do get voted in this seat. You know what I mean? To help you carry forward on what you're wanting to do as far as representing us in Congress.
Well, I wanted to say something about what you were talking about engagements, engaging in wars. One of the major problems that I see with the way we have fought wars recently is rules of engagement.
Yep.
And we haven't given our soldiers the necessary space, probably would be the best word, to do what they need to do. And that's something that I see as very important. What are your feelings on that?
It's a great question. Actually, in 2016, I was deployed to a combat zone in East Africa. We were doing counterterrorism, supporting counterterrorism operations, and defending U.S. embassies. So a lot of our focus, global war on terror. And it's East Africa, a little country called Djibouti. It's about 13 miles from Yemen in the Middle East. I thought there was a map back there, but it's in my head here. But so when I first got there, we were under President Obama's leadership. And President Obama was very hesitant in the way he wanted to prosecute the war. And so every decision, and I won't go into all the details and specifics, there's a lot of attorneys involved, a lot of centralized control. When President Trump took over, he said, commanders on the ground make the decisions, prosecute the war to the fullest extent. We filled up our ammo supply point, literally, and we had Reaper drones leaving and taking people out and coming back, and we some bad dudes are no longer around. I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
And President Trump had a much different approach, and and this is documented. This isn't just Gavin saying this. This is, you can even CNN admitted this, that he delegated authority to commanders on the ground, and that's what we need, is commander in chief who understands that. And then he has brought troops home, and that's a rarity. That we know he's going to be tough, like Soleimani in Iran. He was willing to take him out when necessary, and what that did is it sent a signal to the world: America's not going to mess around. And when people know America's tough, they won't mess with us. And that was the Reagan doctrine: peace through strength.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And,
Yes, I'm glad that you brought that.
Teary-eyed.
Yeah, we're talking about that.
What he says is that when the forces of good are weak, that then tyrants are tempted. Is when it is.
Yes.
Yeah, and
we've used that, haven't we? Yes, we have.
I love
weakness. Oh yeah.
Do you think, and before I get to some other questions, on the same line here, some of the congressional members that are in Congress now that are affiliated with the military, making military decisions, what do you, and not to name anybody, but what do you think that they're, could they be more qualified in what they're doing? I mean, are they as qualified to make the decisions like you're saying, like you would have, knowing the military aspect?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, some of the Adam Schiff, I don't want him making decisions on my national security. That's for sure. I mean, he can't even tell the truth. So and back to Hillary Clinton, what Hillary Clinton did with leaking of classified information, if I did that, I would be in Leavenworth right now.
Absolutely.
And I had to classify documents daily and deal in a secret environment sometimes, and then top secret sometimes. And we had to be very, very careful. If someone made a slight this or that, there was a huge process that we had to do. And yet she was sending the most classified, and it's not just secrets, it's secrets that affect lives on the ground.
Right.
She was sending through her Gmail and on a private server, essentially. And so it is truly scary that there seems to be a double standard for some of those in the highest levels of our government. And so it is important for people who take that job seriously. They're not up there. Congress isn't a place to just hang out and collect a paycheck. It's serious business, and it affects the lives of everyday Americans, and up to and including having to make decisions on war and national security.
Yeah, 2020 has been a heck of a year, hasn't it? I tell you, if we could just rewind it, let's just go back, right? Well, we've had the impeachment trial going, carried over to this year. Of course, COVID-19, and then the uprising of what's going on in America today. So I've got a question for you here. COVID has created unprecedented unemployment, and damage to our economy. What would you do to get the economy healthy and rolling again?
Well, first, let people go back to work. We live in a country where individual choice used to mean something, and it should again. Government can't protect people from every ill out there, every challenge out there. Right. And so we've got to get back to that individual responsibility. I mean, people who built the Hoover Dam, they risked their lives, and some of them died. People who crossed the oceans to get here. I mean, we are the ancestors of a people who were bold and courageous and fearless, crossing oceans to get here, crossing the continent to create this country, being willing to fight the greatest empire in the world at the time, the British Empire.
Yeah.
And we need to find that. I mean, the mammal, the symbol of our country is a bison. It's a wild and free and fierce creature, and that's who we are as Americans. And we need to instill that in the next generation and even in this generation. And so I think government's way overreacted to the COVID crisis and taken away liberty like we've never seen before. And it's a scary precedent, whether it's religious freedom, telling pastors you can't meet, whether it's forcing people to stay home so they can't get their jobs. What do we do now? We stand against government continuing that, and then we also reduce regulations so that people can get back to work.
Right. And
that's the problem. And what we see is, back to China, China has no regulation. That's why everything's very cheap there. Mm-hmm. American workers can compete with other countries if America doesn't overregulate them to the point where they can't do anything. And so getting our economy back on track requires reducing regulation and simplifying it so that businesses can get back to work. So that's one of the things I would do. As far as the uprisings, if you're peacefully protesting, you have every right to do that. First Amendment, it even says peacefully protest and petition the government for redress of grievances. If you are resorting to violence, I have absolutely no tolerance. There's no justification. We don't need to try to understand. We need to stop it immediately because it hurts everybody. It's not even the people that's what's so tragic about this. You have complete lawlessness happening, and we live in a nation of laws, and we make decisions based with elected representatives in a peaceful, deliberative manner. We do not allow mob rule, and that's what we saw in the American Revolution. It was more of an evolution, but we created an official army, and we fought the British, but we had created an official government. In France, mob rule reigned in the French Revolution.
Right.
If you guys know your history, which I know you do. But for our audience out there, the French Revolution, you had the guillotine and the upheaval. The French, it was the mob. It was the committee of unelected mobs basically roaming around the streets of Paris making decisions. And we can't have that here in this country. We're a nation of laws, and we have to return to law and order and secure and make our streets peaceful. And then we can have some discussions. I'm all for discussions on how to improve our country. We've been doing that for 250 years, and we need to continue to improve this great nation and build on the foundation, but we can't do so from a point of violence.
No, we can't. And if you've listened to our show, which you have, you've heard Byron and us preach that we are a nation of laws.
It's a nation of laws.
Yeah. There's no qualms about that.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is exactly how it's supposed to be. You have people go up and represent you in the government.
Right.
They're from the people. They govern for the people.
Right.
They are basically civil servants for the people.
Right.
But the law is what controls the country, because that's what the our founding document is, the Constitution. It's law.
Right.
It's law.
Yeah.
I mean,
and your shirt, I love your shirt, and it's we the people, right? So, and I teach my students the consent to the governed idea. And it talks about in the Declaration of Independence, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends and isn't protecting the people, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Well, the way you do that is through elections.
Right.
And there are some people who need to be altered and abolished. Some elected officials in Congress. Nancy Pelosi is one of them. And so, and that's what needs to happen. And I can think of a lot of other examples.
Of course.
The government of Wisconsin,
you mentioned one of them a while ago.
But we do it in a peaceful manner. We don't do it, and that's, I think, that an important distinction, even in history. the American Revolution, because a lot of people are referring back to the American Revolution. It wasn't all about violence. Yes, there were battles fought between two armies that were declared war against each other.
Right.
But a lot of what it was a breaking away and an evolution, not just chaos. There was
Correct.
not chaos in the streets constantly.
No, and I definitely agree with that. So,
Got me going on history.
yeah, I got you going on history.
Man, but you keep on preaching.
Yeah, we're gonna keep
I will
preaching
sit-
that.
I will sit here and eat this
I got
all
it right
night long.
here. You see Washington's Cross
Yeah.
and all the other great books.
Well, we could have put those up here, Gavin, if you
Yeah,
wanted to,
yeah,
so we can show everybody. I want to just welcome in some people. That
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
tuning in.
Sorry, no.
We got Tony Marzullo, David Kilgore, Jason Box, Sarge. I work with him over in Lake City.
Yeah.
Former Marine right there. Richard and Julie Walmsley. There's no such thing as a former Marine. A Marine.
Once Marine,
Yeah,
always
always a Marine.
Semper Fi.
That's it for five. Lisa Moody Tomlinson's on and Chris Davis. Have you ever heard of Slice and Dice Barbecue in Lottie?
Yeah, of course.
That's Chris Davis that owns that.
I need to go check it out.
Yeah, you need
Yeah,
to. He just
that's
opened up
good.
the new restaurant over
I
there.
love, and you realize
Yeah.
more than ever now. I hate this. We've got to support the local businesses and
Right.
because they're struggling with the COVID.
Right.
So for sure. So.
I have a
Absolutely.
question for him from
Okay.
Carlton Jones.
All right, Carlton Jones.
If we are to get back to taking care of ourselves, does that mean you want to get rid of Social Security and other social programs that benefit America?
No, absolutely not. So that Americans have paid into that, and that's a promise the government made to them. And so if you're currently on Social Security, there should be no changes whatsoever. Now, I do think for the long-term sustainability of Social Security, for people my age and younger, we should go ahead and let them know we're going to slightly increase the age for those who are, because I still have a ways before retirement, so
Right.
I can plan for it. Those currently on it or getting close to it, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And I'm a conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in saving money, but I don't believe in doing that by breaking our promise to somebody. And that's what government has made a promise to the American people, and people count on that. So absolutely not. That's completely different, though, than government forcing you not to work. And that's people want to work. And obviously Social Security is when people get to an age where in some cases they're not able to work. And so completely different scenario, but would not do anything to, in fact, I think a cost of living increase makes sense as inflation goes up for people currently on Social Security. But to long term, for my generation, we do have to look at some slight tweaks because people are living longer, and we've got to make Social Security sustainable. So,
Absolutely. That's a
And
great one.
the other half of that question is what always concerns me when people ask it. He says Social Security and other social programs.
yeah,
Social Security is not an entitlement.
No, it's
We've
not.
said that before
Right.
on
Yes,
the
we
show.
have.
it's a promise. Yeah.
Other social programs are entitlements for the most part.
Right.
So when you talk about Social Security, you have to split that off.
When
Right.
on other social programs, here's my philosophy. I think we call it a social safety net, right? But a
Right.
net is designed to keep people in bondage and trap them. You net a fish, you keep it in bondage.
Right.
I think that's the wrong way to look at it. We shouldn't have a net for people. What we should have is a safety trampoline. A safe, if you bounce on a trampoline, if you fall, you don't hit the ground and bust your head open, but you bounce back up on your feet. And the system should be designed to get people back on their feet. And that because dignity and worth comes from working.
Right.
Work is not a punishment. Work is dignity and value. And so when somebody's on hard times, a little bit of a trampoline, but bounce them back up on their feet, and then it works out better for them and for the taxpayers.
Boy, I love that
I like that.
philosophy.
I like
That is
that.
excellent philosophy. Want to welcome in Mark Goody. I don't know if you know some of these people. You probably do.
Yeah.
Mark Goody, Mary Jane Schofield.
Hey, Mary Jane.
There you go. Shirley Bagwell and Sharon. Look at the sheriff.
Sheriff.
Hey,
Good to see you on, and
Yeah.
I know you were on last week, so
yeah, he did a great job, as a matter of fact, too. So we were supposed to have one of your running mates on last week, but she had to cancel at the last minute. So we're going to try to get her on as well. But right now, this is about you and what you're going to help do if you do get elected into Congress. I have another question for you.
Sure.
The tragic death of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Backing up on COVID-19 here, the tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis policeman has led to protests and riots and across the country. How will you help to mend this racial divide?
Well, first, I think most Americans agree unequivocally that what happened to George Floyd was horrific, and the police officer in that case was brutal and murdered George Floyd and should be held accountable. And the criminal justice system is already in the process of holding him accountable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that unfortunately on all sides of an issue, we sometimes look at the worst examples, the worst case scenarios. And so, for instance, the police, the horrific actions of one police officer we shouldn't say that all police are that way. I mean, there's doctors who mess up and their license is taken away, or there's doctors that even are in some cases egregiously kill somebody and they're put in jail. That doesn't mean we stop going to the hospital. And there's a lot of bad politicians. It doesn't mean we don't need elected officials still. Bad parents doesn't mean we don't still need parents. We still absolutely need police officers. I'm so thankful that we have people who are standing on the front lines in our community, keeping us safe. But as far as moving forward, I'm a big believer in the power of education. I'm a history teacher, and education can transform lives in a way that I think, and so President Trump talked about in his State of the Union opportunity scholarships.
Yes.
And what this would do is it would take federal tax credits from corporations and put it into a pot of money that would be scholarships for low-income students. And some of those tend to happen to be minority students. Some are, some aren't. But minority, low-income students, and then give them the chance at a great education, because a great education changes lives. And that I think will heal in so many ways when we all have the same equal opportunity for quality education. And that's one policy step. And that's what I want to focus on. Let's focus on policies that improve the lives of every American, not just yell at each other and create strife. And the riots, sadly, are not connected to George Floyd. The riots are opportunists who are probably foreign actors in some cases, anarchists, who are using the peaceful protest and trying to take them down a different route. And so we have to separate those two and deal harshly with people who are rioting and violence and causing destruction, and then the peaceful protests. The peaceful protests should be separated out from the riots. So.
On the same question here, on the same topic, how would you personally want to handle the situation that's going on in Seattle right now?
Well, you can't have anarchy and this idea that it's a block party. They're shooting each other. And what's ironic about it, and it's sad, I don't enjoy this, but the irony of it is that they created an autonomous zone, and what is the first thing they did? Put up fences and created strong borders. And they actually had stronger ID laws than the U.S. does. Where when you came in, you had to show photo ID and all kinds of things. And but it's just ridiculous. They sadly, it was like a bunch of whiny kids who had some destructive tendencies too. But if I were the mayor of Seattle, I would say disband immediately, or the police are going in and we're going to methodically clean up and restore order. Because there's businesses and properties and homeowners. Think about a family. Think about an 80-year-old lady who's in Seattle in her home. Should she be held captive in her home because some rioters want to make a point and think that they now run the streets? She didn't elect those rioters. She didn't choose for them to control her life. And so it's lawlessness cannot be tolerated. The adults in the room have to step up to the plate and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And, you were talking about the poor, 80-year-old lady that's trying to get her medicine and just trying to make it day to day. I mean, how is she supposed to do that when she can't even get out of her own home? These people are...
Well, and then they're going around extorting money and saying, if you want protection, you have to give us money.
Right.
But they're not doing it in an orderly way, and that's the thing. Our government is built on this idea of orderly processes that create checks and balances, and the people still retain the control. When you have mob rule, who's in control? I didn't elect a mob that decided to tear down that statue or that statue. And so if we have discussions about statues, that's one thing. But this idea that you get to choose what you want to be out there and not to be out there is ridiculous. We don't live in a country where violence wins. We live in a country where law and order prevails.
So if Gavin Rollins was the mayor of Seattle, and this was happening in your city right here, how would you, and you sort of told us a little bit how you would, after you clean this up, what would you do with the people that are involved in this? What would you do?
I would put him in jail and prosecute him for sin of the law. And what I would do if I were the mayor, I'd put a face shield on, and I would go out there with the police, and we would clean the autonomous zone out. We would take charge of the situation. And we would, I mean, Churchill did this. He had an anarchist, and he was Home Secretary, and he had an anarchist before World War II, anarchist who had tried to take over a building. He went onto the front lines, and they said, "Mr. Secretary, we don't want you." And he said, "We've got to deal with this." And they ended up burning the whole building down, and because they were trying to shoot and kill police officers and stuff. So sometimes you got to deal with situations and handle them. And people want leadership. They're starving for real leadership, and I'm not afraid to stand up and take a stand and provide that strong leadership, and that's what President Trump has done. And that's why I say I'll fight alongside of him in Congress. When he was my commander-in-chief, I was fighting under him because he was the boss. But in Congress, it'll be co-equal branches, so I'll fight alongside of him, and I'll work to in Congress, and he'll obviously be serving as president. So.
Yeah, Byron, David, Michael, I love what he just said. What he just said earlier. What did he say? He said he would put on the riot gear himself, and he's going out there with them. Yeah, you lead the battle to do that, and I really like that because some
Washington
people
did
just
that, actually.
Yeah, Washington did
the Whiskey
well.
Rebellion.
Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah. So again, they disbanded because they knew that he meant it. General Washington.
Well,
President
Marshall,
the same president, and he was riding at the head of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. So, did you have something real quick? I was going to read something off the teleprompter real quick.
He was talking about mob rule.
Yeah.
And all I could think about was democracies.
Democracy. Mm-hmm.
That's all I could think about.
Yep. Exactly
and
right.
we use that term, throw that term around too much.
Yep.
Because we're not.
Yeah, we're a republic, Adam, if you keep it, right?
That's it.
If you keep it.
That's it.
A constitutional republic, which is very important. It's based on a document, not just random assortment of laws. It's a very concrete process, which I think is important because democracies have a tendency to be blown and tossed by every popular whim, and that's what Madison was concerned about. And so he wanted a foundational document that was the rock on which we could build this great republic.
Right. Again, you're joining us on the spot with David Rodgers. I'm your host, David Rodgers. To my right here, this good-looking young man right here is I used to be at one time, Gavin. Believe it or not.
Hey, I think you're still good looking.
Hey, there you go. Gavin Rollins, running for the seat that Ted Yoho is going to give up in this election. To my left, I see you laughing, Byron. To my left is Mr. Byron Maxwell. One of my co-hosts here, Mr. Dave Holland, producing the show in the back, and Mr. Michael Heater directing. Thank you for joining in. Great to have this young man here. Very knowledgeable, very, very intelligent, and I love about your military service. Thank you for all that you do and with the military as well. Got a few questions here, and I've got some others as well. So we got the questions coming in. Please keep them coming. This show is run by you guys. Hey, it's all about you guys at home. Oh, yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
So one of the guests watching asked about if George Floyd deserved a folded American flag. I believe that honor is reserved for members who have died serving our country in an official capacity as military members. So, no, I don't think that was appropriate. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, then that's a great answer right there.
And I will answer with my comments on that on our next show because I'm not going into that.
Yeah, I was just going to say we probably not the right time.
And the flag code has rules on that, so I'm not sure. I guess Nancy Pelosi has never let the law be a factor for her, but so
we can just leave that one at that. There you go. Well, anyway, a lot of thumbs up for the education comment. They like Noah Gibson asking about how we could upgrade the police departments.
Yeah, well, I think part of education and training are critical, and so apologize there.
No, that's okay.
Our police are facing difficult choices, and as a military member, we go through de-escalation training, and I know the police does too, but I think that's a key because you're facing a split-second decision, your adrenaline's pumping, it's a crazy scenario, and you have to make a split-second decision. And so more training on how to replicate in training those stressful situations so that we create good decision-making. Right. And that's, I think, that what we've seen happen. I can't judge the mind of a police officer when they're making a specific decision one way or the other. But I do know this, that if we create those scenarios for high quality training, then we can kind of de-escalate situations in a better way. that'll help all Americans. That's one thing I think is important, among others, that we can, as we talk about the education and various other things.
Right. Carlton Jones is asking about voting by mail. Many already vote by mail, including himself. What do you think about that?
Well, Florida has an absentee ballot system, and I think it needs to make sure that it's secure. But what I don't think needs to happen, and what President Trump is talking about, President Trump is not saying we shouldn't allow absentee ballots for military members. I voted for President Trump in a combat zone. So he's not talking about that. What he's talking about is when Democrats move the goalpost in the middle of election. Wisconsin, we saw this happen. They tried to delay the election and say it was COVID, and then they suddenly it's these games, these opening and closing of polling locations, these games that are happening with the elections. And so I think we need voter IDs. When you go to the polls, you should have to verify who you are. And also with the absentee ballot, there should be a strict process that you have to go through, because we have to have accountability. And that's not to keep anyone from voting. That's to keep accountability so that we know that somebody in the graveyard is not voting. Right. So we know somebody who's not here legally is not voting. It's to protect this great republic.
Right, and that's a great answer. Welcome in Kenneth Reed and Susan Bickle. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Susan.
Hey, there you go. You know Susan.
I do. I don't know Kenneth, but hey, Kenneth, too. Not trying to leave you out. I just don't know you yet.
There you go. And we talked a little bit about this. As riots wreak havoc in cities across the nation, and the extreme liberal left calls for defunding the police, which you just went into, the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms is more important than ever. Yep. How will you support, Gavin, the Second Amendment right?
Well, it's very clear in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, this is the key, shall not be infringed. And we've seen a lot of infringement on that, unfortunately. And I think we need to repeal some gun laws, not implement more. And here's why. It's not that I'm just in love with guns for the sake of guns. I'm in love with the independence and protection you are able to provide your family with a firearm. And I'll give you an example, and I won't go into all the details, but a while back, the police showed up, had a situation happen. And it was not an emergency situation, thankfully, but they did show up, and they got here pretty quick. It was like 5 to 7 minutes. And I remember thinking that the person who was knocking on my window in the middle of the night, and who I didn't know and was just a random person, I remember thinking to myself, had they wanted to do me harm, no matter how quickly the police had responded, it would not have been quick enough to protect me. And so I'm thankful for the police and the work they do, the Clay County Sheriff's Office in this case. But two, I'm very thankful for the Second Amendment. It gives me the ability to protect myself and my family. And people say, well, what assault rifles? No one needs an assault rifle. Well, first, I don't even know what that term means. Assault rifle is a technique. It's not a certain classification of weapon.
Right.
But second, I think of the case of a pregnant mom in Tampa. And two intruders came in, and they were beating her husband, and her kids were there, and she was trying to and they were armed. And so what does she do? She goes and gets an AR-15, she shoots one of them, and then the other leaves. Was she wanting to go around and hunt with an AR-15? I mean, no. She wanted to protect her family. Right. And an AR-15 in that case was necessary to protect their family. And we see with the violent riots, that type of thing, sometimes you do need a little bit more firepower to protect yourself. And let's face it, criminals are going to get guns one way or the other. They are. No law is going to keep them from getting guns. Exactly. The laws only keep law-abiding citizens from getting guns. And that was the argument when I was pushing for our employees to be able to conceal carry on the job. They said, well, what if somebody comes in and wants to murder their colleague with a gun? I said, so you think our employee handbook is going to keep somebody who wants to murder somebody from doing that? Somebody who wants to murder somebody is already breaking the law by wanting to murder. Right. And so what we need to do is our employees who want to keep themselves safe should be able to, law-abiding citizens, be able to protect themselves. And that is what the Second Amendment is all about. Not only protecting yourself from other crazy citizens who might try to harm you, it's also the government. It's a good check on government power because, real quick history thing, which if you don't mind. So in the 20th century, the bloodiest conflicts happened in the history of our world, and World War I, II, Vietnam, Korea, a host of wars. All of those deaths from all of those wars pale in comparison. They're still smaller than the total number of people who were killed in the 20th century from their own governments. Mao in China killing hundreds of millions. The estimates change depending on who you talk to, but from starvation and various other means. Soviet Russia, Stalin killing 20 to 30 million of his own people. I could go on. Pol Pot. Throughout the world, government killing its own people has been the single most destructive force in the 20th century. And that's not Gavin saying that. Peter Rummel, who wrote a book called Death by Government, documents this in a lot of detail. So when conservatives say, I'm a little concerned about government, they actually have a historically verifiable reason for that. They might not know that. They might just have a sense of that. But liberals love to make fun. Well, what's the government going to do? Well, government throughout history has acted badly. And so we should keep it accountable and hold it accountable. And the Second Amendment is one way to do that.
And that is a great lead into what I was going to ask him about the Second
Absolutely.
Amendment. Do you think we have a problem with the English language with the Second Amendment because of the term arms?
Right.
I think that, first of all, this idea that it's only for the militia, only for the National Guard is insane, because the First Amendment says the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition their government for redress agreements, right? So you got the right of the people. Let's take that out of the First Amendment. Let's look at the Second Amendment. That same phrase, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, is in both the First and Second Amendment. So is the First Amendment for the National Guard only? No. This idea that they were talking about the right of the people in both cases, and that's an individual personal right. It's confirmed by DC versus Heller, and Scalia wrote a brilliant opinion on that as a Supreme Court. But it shall not be infringed. It's a personal individual right to keep and bear arms. And I think that people get scared by lack of knowledge. And so one thing a lot of people don't realize, every year the CDC estimates about 500,000 people peaceably protect themselves from being harmed by somebody with a firearm. Because of having a firearm, let me restate that a different way, because of having a firearm, they're able to keep themselves alive. So when you're talking about gun laws and this and that, if you're infringing on someone's right to protect themselves, you might think you're doing good, but you're probably not. It's just a feel-good policy that actually harms law-abiding citizens who want to lawfully protect themselves. And we're talking 500,000 people who might not be able to lawfully protect themselves.
Right.
And I could go on and on about this. It's not about loving guns. If you do, that's fine too.
Right.
It's not about having a cannon in your backyard, although I think that would be pretty cool. But it's about lawfully being able to protect your family. And that
what are we talking about?
He just said something that's key to me about.
I was a Civil War buff growing up, so I would love a cannon at some point. But
I think we have a problem with the English language because everybody says the Second Amendment is about guns.
Guns, right.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment's not about guns. The Second Amendment is about arms.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And everybody in politics talks about guns. It's guns, it's guns, it's guns.
When England has super strict gun laws, and guess what? People knife each other to death.
Right.
So at some point, it's the human condition. That's the problem. Good and evil doesn't run. It's in the hearts of every one of us, and that's the ultimate challenge. When someone walks into a school, that's not a gun problem; it's a heart problem. That person has evil and something happening to them that is far greater than just a gun. So,
while we're talking about guns, can I ask you what do you think about open carry?
I'm in favor of. I believe in constitutional carry. I think if you're an American citizen, you deserve the right to carry. But I don't know that I could get that passed. So what I would support in Congress is reciprocity for concealed carry across state lines. The idea that you go to New York and you conceal carry and then they put you in jail, whereas in Florida you're allowed to, is just ridiculous. So I would support being able to. And the reason for that, some people, I love the constitutional scholars who say, but I thought you were for states' rights. Why would you do that?
Right.
Here's why. It's in the Bill of Rights. It's a fundamental freedom. If it's a fundamental freedom, Congress has a right and a responsibility to protect it. Life, Second Amendment, other constitutionally protected freedoms. If it's a government program, let's let the states deal with it. If it's a nuanced local, like how big your flower beds can be or how often you have to mow your grass, that could be a local issue. Right. If it's a fundamental American value, American right that government should be restrained from, that I think the federal government has a right to define in many cases. So
I like that answer. Dave, do you have anything for it, Dave?
So.
Have you have a question? I knew you've been sitting back there listening, full of information, isn't he?
If and when you take office, what would be your first act?
Good question. Well, there's quite a few that I'd love to see, but right away, I think we need some FBI accountability. So I would co-sign some FBI accountability acts because the people who are illegally spying and the corruption there needs to be rooted out. Because I have good friends who are FBI agents, and there are a lot of great law enforcement agents, FBI agents, but we need to hold some people at the top accountable. So for some of them being fired, so an FBI accountability act. National security, so several pieces of legislation on China that get kind of nuanced to explain, but are important on that. And then I think I would love to see an adoptions instead of abortions act. So when I'm pro-life, I believe life begins at conception until natural death. Right. But I also am pro-abortion or adoption because abortion is a mom is faced with a tough choice, but adoption is a beautiful picture of the life-affirming choice. And my family's been blessed by that. My sister's adopted and my nephew is adopted. And so I would sponsor legislation that would take money from Planned Parenthood and it would give it to adoption agencies in a grant to states. And so that would be another one I would like to introduce, and I would co-sign several pro-life legislation. I'd also like the Second Amendment stuff, concealed carry reciprocity, so that you could concealed carry across state lines. Mm-hmm. So I would be busy my first week while everyone else is like, here's your office, that kind of thing. I'd have my team filing bills. And when I got on the commission, my first meeting on the commission, I passed a resolution on the lakes issue. Right. And the reason I did that is, and they said, well, this is your first meeting. You already got legislation? I said, yeah, I'm not going to, we don't have time to wait around and debate and figure. We've got to act. We've got to take some action. And then we also need to get people back to work. So I would try to cut some regulation, do some things on a variety. I mean, there's so many things that I hate. I know you probably wanted one answer, but I would be active, flow. And I don't think you have to have some focus, but I also think you can roll up your sleeves and get in the fight and do a lot of things.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
But most politicians, I've got to wait, and I have to. What about I got to save my political capital? Well, what are you saving it for? Let's spend it at some point. Get in the fight and start working.
I like the way hit the ground running, and that's what I like to see. He didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to get my little." I'm hitting the ground running. He's already got a plan in his mind. I guarantee you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this young man right here has got a plan in mind already. As soon as when and if you do get elected, you like I said, what you were just telling Dave, you got a plan, and you hit the ground running.
When I'd work with Congressman Yoho to say, hey, what have you already been working on, and how can we carry that on? And then what are some things you would want it to, and that type of thing. And I'll do a lot of listening too, and learning the process. But leadership is leadership, whether it's in a combat zone or whether it's in Congress. It's being bold, and that's the biggest thing. I think courage. Courage is contagious. We've seen that fear is contagious, but courage is also contagious. And when you stand up and are willing to be courageous on issues, then people will come around you and will follow.
Yeah. Part of our creeds, right? Military creeds, right? That word courage is always there in it somewhere.
Loyalty, respect, self-defense, honor, integrity, and personal courage.
You got that right. That's exactly
right. Spell leadership. LDRS.
Yes, it does. It spells leadership.
Yeah. Second part to that question: we got a lot of elderly in this state.
Yeah.
That need help. How
seasoned citizens, right?
Very seasoned. And I'm fast approaching myself.
So am I, but okay, yeah.
But what can you do to help the seniors in the state of Florida?
Well, I think some of the complexity in government is a big problem. And so it's like you have to have a PhD and several law degrees just to figure out what your prescription drugs are, or the process to get your prescription drugs. We need to simplify some processes. With taxes, we need to simplify the way the IRS is. I'd love to just get rid of the IRS. I've signed the Fair Tax Pledge. I'm the Fair Tax guy.
We are too. We
talked about that. So I'm the only one actually who signed the Fair Tax Pledge in this race. So yeah. So simplifying government is one big thing that helps everybody. And then obviously making sure Social Security is solid and fighting for that cost of living increase, but then also making some changes for my generation so that it's sustainable. Those are a couple things off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I'd also do a lot of listening and learn what is important and what issues we can work on together to make sure that.
To back up Dave's there, that's a great answer.
Hold on one second.
All right, go ahead.
I want to say something about the fair tax real quick.
Sure.
Gavin, I love the fair tax, but I only want a consumption tax added to this country if we get rid of
The income
the
tax.
income tax.
Yes.
And
The
Washington,
16th Amendment. Yep.
yeah, Washington D.C. has a habit of saying we're going to do something and then not doing it. And
Well, I would
that's-
never vote for a consumption tax if it wasn't eliminating the income tax and basically doing away with the IRS.
Yeah.
No, but I do think this idea of and Mike Huckabee was in favor of it. Governor DeSantis pushed for the fair tax, and they tried to claim he had somehow raised taxes because he supported the fair tax. Well, they failed to mention he wanted to reduce and remove a whole bunch of other taxes. It's a shift that makes it more equitable for everyone, and it's a better way of doing it. Government does things very convoluted, and complexity does not equal accountability. So a lot of times people think if it's really complicated, then we're more accountable. You can hold people accountable with simple rules. If your parents told you, "I want you home at midnight, but take away 2 hours, but add 1 hour," and then and it's the Chinese calendar, and the sun is shining on this direction, and they did this. How many kids would know when their curfew was? They would have no idea, right? That's government. Government would be like, "Well, we got to hold you accountable." No, you're just making things really confusing and complicated. So, and that's what government does.
Going through that today.
People who want to follow the law can't because they don't even understand it. It's so complicated.
I want to get into a couple of comments.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, let me get into a couple of comments.
are
Are really good. Welcome, Raymond. No, he wants to ask your opinion about term limits.
Yeah.
How about
Well,
that?
so I also signed the Term Limits USA pledge to fight for a constitutional amendment for term limits, because what we need is everybody across the board term limited, because what we have right now is, like, Nancy Pelosi's been in office longer than I've been alive.
Oh, yes.
So we need to term limit everyone and add a constitutional amendment that would term limit politicians. So I've signed that term limits pledge and support term limits for all members of Congress. I think it has to be everyone on the same page. So.
It just, with term limits too, Gavin, it gives us too some newer and better ideas, and it's not always a stalemate. You know what I mean? It's not always stale. And if you have term limits, you can get people in there with fresh ideas and a fresh mind. That can think outside the box a little bit instead of always thinking inside and being tunnel vision all the time.
I hate to play devil's
Sure.
advocate with this term limits thing, but the term limits to me are a double-edged sword. Yeah. Because when you have a congressman or a senator that is doing a good job and you only limit them to 2 terms,
right,
then they can't continue to do their good job.
I hear you, but here's the thing. I think the net overall effect, because there are cases where they're great and you wish they could stay, but the net effect is you get it changes the whole dynamic, and people go there as citizen legislators for a season, not forever. Right. And that, I think, is the key. And unfortunately, you keep some good ones, but you also flush out the bad ones, and that's the key on term limits. A couple of these others, the sheriff, I would not be able to continue teaching full time because I couldn't leave my students randomly and go vote on issues. But I would love to do guest lecturing and do kind of some seminars and that type of thing, because I think it would be a neat opportunity to share as a member of Congress what the Constitution means to me and talk to students that way. On teachers' unions, I think that they have some serious challenges, because unfortunately a lot of times teachers' unions are focused on teachers, not what's necessarily best for students. Right. But I have many good friends who are in teachers' unions. Not all people in teachers' unions are bad, but they tend to be liberal and they support things like Planned Parenthood, so that's why I never joined the teachers' union, because I can't support an organization that supports that. And I think they're supporting sleepy Joe Biden. So, like the student in my class who never stayed awake. But another question on the presidency, right. Who would I support? So President Trump, I hope he gets elected. I believe he will get reelected to a second term. But if a Democrat got elected, what I would do is I would focus on policies, not the person in the office. So if it was a good policy, I would support it. If it was reforming and improving government, I would support it. If it was a bad policy, I would fight it tooth and nail to keep it from happening. So I'm not about the party specifically. I'm about the policy, and there's some bad Republican ideas and there's some bad Democratic ideas. I tend to agree with more Republican ideas and generally, but I'm a conservative first and then a Republican, not the other way around.
I gotcha. That's a great answer to those questions here. Again, welcome to On the Spot with David Rodgers. We got Mr. Gavin Rollins right here. We're in his beautiful home here in Keystone Heights. To my left here, my co-host, Mr. Byron Bagwell, producing the show, Mr. Dave Holland. We got Mr. Michael Heater directing the show in the back here. Got a lot more questions, a lot more things to get to. Please send in your questions. I know you're monitoring, Byron, the questions as well.
Well, I already know the answer to what this next question is. But BJ Griffiths asked, do you believe in standing for the national anthem when playing?
Absolutely. In fact, I got in a controversy because I said, if you don't believe in standing for the national anthem, I'll buy you a one-way ticket to Venezuela. And so the news interviewed me on that. And I said, they were saying, are you serious? And I said, if you renounce your citizenship and go to Venezuela, I will actually buy you a ticket. We'll have the attorneys come up with paperwork. And
sure.
I haven't had anyone take me up on that offer. People have said, well, I'll go to Sweden on vacation. I'm saying, no. You have to give up your citizenship and go to Venezuela specifically because you love socialist paradise, right? So go to Venezuela. But no, I believe in standing for the national anthem. Now, do I think that people have a right to protest things I don't agree with? Yes. Do I want them to? No. That's a difference. I think that, so if you're a military member and you're saying, well, I fought for that right for them to kneel during the national anthem, I agree that they have that right. I don't think they should do it. And how many times did you hear maybe your parents say, just because you can doesn't mean you should? And when you kneel for the national anthem, what you do is you protest in the wrong way, and then the focus becomes, it's saying that you hate the country as a whole instead of whatever issue you're protesting. And so what I would say to someone like Colin Kaepernick, stand for the national anthem, and then donate to a cause that you believe in to actually make a difference. But when you kneel, you desecrate the lives of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, the last full measure of devotion, as Lincoln said, and that's the biggest problem I have for it. And it just we've got to have some respect for this great nation and what it has given us in the republic we have.
I did want to tell you this. Colin Kaepernick does donate to causes. He donates to a bunch of different causes.
Well, that's good to hear.
But the problem is we don't know about those donations to those causes because of his acts.
Yeah.
Right.
His acts make people that believe like we believe completely turn our ears deaf to what he's doing.
And unfortunately, for him, it's become more about him than the cause, it seems.
Right.
And so, honestly, I think he thinks that his stance has caused him not to get a job. No, he's just not a great quarterback.
Right. No.
I couldn't play for some of these teams, and it's not because I'm a conservative, it's just because I'm not a great quarterback. I mean, I did well in Pop Warner for one season, but other than that, it was
you threw 50 touchdown passes, no interceptions.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
In my head, at least. So.
I'm with you on the Colin Kaepernick thing, and we talked about this on our show. I'm a big sports guy. That's where my forte is a little bit. And I personally think, my opinion, I will see if you agree a little bit. I didn't mind him protesting, as you said.
Sure.
Hey, I just thought that he picked the wrong venue and
the
wrong way to do it. Do you agree with that, Gavin?
I do, absolutely, because that same flag that he's and that same national anthem, the first African American soldier who got the Medal of Honor charging Fort Wagner and was a part of the 54th Maine, and that's the same flag that guy died for. Right. And so the Vietnam, I've drawn a blank as to his name, but he's a Medal of Honor recipient. He fought in Vietnam and received the Medal of Honor from Putnam County, which I think we should put a statue up for him, and I'm going to work on that. He deserves us standing up and honoring the flag. And so we can work towards improving this nation, as we've talked about, a more perfect union. But the wrong way to do it is by hating America. And when I teach American history, I don't teach America as perfect. I don't teach America as horrible. I teach America warts and all, not warts only. So we focus on the totality of American government, and we say America's made some mistakes, but we're moving towards a more perfect union. We've overcome. And people take it out of context, too. They act like America's the only one that ever made any mistakes in history, and they try to make these moral equivalency arguments, which is crazy. And so America has made some mistakes in doing things, but that's not equivalent to killing 20 million of your own people in gulags like Russia.
Right.
So,
Right.
Well, you have people when they talk about that, they only, like you're saying, they only want to focus on the bad.
Right.
And what they don't include in it is they don't include the fact that we built in ways to fix our problems.
absolutely.
Right.
We have the system like the First Amendment to peacefully protest.
Protest.
Well, speaking of that, there's a lot of talk about something that's going on that kind of upsets me a little bit, and David, and I'm sure you, and that's the burning of the American flag.
Yeah.
I know we have the right to do something like that, but
Yeah.
I don't like it.
It disgusts me to the core. I have trouble when I see a flag that either falls on the ground or I kind of want to jump and grab it. And, even sometimes, well-meaning people who leave their flag out, and I actually probably have to, when it gets dark, I'll have to go grab my flag out because you got to have a light on it. And I think why do we do that? Is it about a cloth? No, it's about what that cloth symbolizes. It's about the men and women who never came home to their kids, to their loved ones who gave up all their tomorrows. That's what it's about. And who we are as a people, we're not one ethnicity, we're not one race, we're not one tribe. What we are is a shared set of values, and that flag symbolizes it. And so I do think we should respect it because it's respecting all we stand for as a country, not a piece of cloth.
I know that you were just talking about that piece of cloth, and you're exactly right. It's way, 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 way more value than that. And I know some people don't think that way. But if they would go, and me and Byron talked about this a little bit on the show a couple of weeks ago, about the 13 folds of that flag.
Yeah.
And if people would go and read that, buddy, I'm telling you, we were going to go over it on the show.
It's amazing.
And we didn't want to tear up on the show. I'm telling you, we would have.
I had to tell them stop.
We had to stop. We had to stop.
And Johnny Cash, that ragged old flag, I still tear up when I hear that. It's I'm mighty proud of that ragged old flag.
Yeah.
Well, they're also talking about changing the national anthem.
Yeah.
And I don't believe we should do that.
No, I don't think so.
Well, here's the problem. No one in history is perfect except for one person, Jesus Christ. And this idea that we can only revere those people who are perfect. Winston Churchill had a lot of faults, but he was a courageous man who stood up and faced down tyranny during his time. George Washington did own slaves, but he freed the slaves at the end, and he helped create a country that eventually freed the slaves and created a great environment moving forward for where all Americans could fight for freedom. And America is a story of change and overcoming challenges and triumph and becoming the people we are today. And this idea that we have to only have people in history who were perfect, or the national anthem, if it's every line in it isn't perfect, then we should completely discard it. Most people don't even know the other lines of the national anthem.
Right.
But it's talking about who we are as a country, and the first line is very clear, and just simply talking about America. And so I think we should keep the national anthem and continue to stand proudly for it.
Absolutely.
So it's not a great composition. It musically it's not, but the words are so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's been used for so long. The only way I would agree to it is if we changed it to the last verse.
Yeah.
Nobody knows those verses. Please, guys, look up all the verses. They're great.
Right. Mike, do you have a question?
It sounds great when Jimi Hendrix did on the electric guitar.
I don't.
Pretty amazing. Right?
I don't have a problem with it.
Hendrix version was good.
That was it. But at Woodstock.
Woodstock.
Yeah, Woodstock.
I tried it on my
right.
guitar. It didn't sound nothing like his.
I have a guitar in my room. I was hoping through osmosis I'd learn how to play it. Hasn't happened. It just stares at me.
I can help you with that, Gavin.
That's awesome.
If you ever find the
Seriously, yeah.
There you go. I want to continue on with some of the questions here. The right to life is a hot button issue as we face the likelihood of new Supreme Court appointments, which only further affirms the importance of the upcoming presidential election. A new court with a conservative majority could reverse the Roe versus Wade decision that legalized abortion. I know you talked a little bit about this here just a few minutes ago. What are your feelings about the right to life, and what would you do to protect the unborn as a member of Congress?
Well, it's fundamental, and I've never voted for a candidate who had the wrong beliefs on life, because if you're wrong on that fundamental issue, then where are you going to be on other issues? And it's very clear in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights that government can't and shouldn't take away. That among these are life. Life is first in that, and then it goes on to say liberty and the pursuit of happiness. But life is fundamental, and life, I believe that the Bible talks about life beginning at conception. Psalm 139 says, I formed you in your mother's womb and knew you and set you apart. And then science confirms 18 days. We have detectable heartbeat at 18 days. And so science confirms that life begins at conception, and we in America should stand for life. And we don't have to do so in an angry way. We do so by loving the difficult choices people face. But that's why I think adoption is an amazing picture. And so I'd absolutely fight for life. And I would fight to support women in making the choice for adoption and other options in those difficult circumstances.
Excellent answer there. We heard you say, talk about communist China a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time there. Is the greatest threat to our nation. Please expound and tell us how you would deal with communist China as a member of Congress.
Well, what's interesting is, as I've talked about communist China, we've seen an uptick in activity. We actually had some activity from Beijing on our website. And I'm guessing there's not a lot of 3rd Congressional District voters from Beijing that live in Beijing currently. So I'm guessing we've gotten the interest of the Chinese Communist Party. But let me say very clearly, I am unafraid. You will not bully me or back me down. I will stand up to your authoritarian, evil regime. And because you are hurting Americans, you're hurting your own people, and we will not let it stand. We're Americans. We don't stand for that. But what would I do specifically? Chinese telecoms, we would draw a line in the sand and say you can't operate here unless you do so transparently. If you want in terms of trade, they're dumping products into our system, and they aren't accountable to the international system. They violate international trade all the time. They're cheating. It's not fair trade. It's cheating, and they're not, and they're using our system against us. And so what we need is fair trade, not free trade. And with China, it's really anyone but China, because when you buy, and I've tried, it's difficult. It's not. I'm not trying to say it's easy, but our campaign shirts are made in America because we wanted to make sure that we were supporting American-owned businesses and workers. And it's tough. I mean, I have products in this house. I'm sure they're made in China. But what we need is an all-out effort on multiple fronts. And President Trump's been strong on China, and he's gotten a lot of blowback. People have made fun of him. Joe Biden said, China is a threat. Come on. China has hypersonic missiles right now that can hit our country, and with nuclear war tips. China is a threat. And they're trying to squash free speech through telecommunications infrastructure, all kinds of things, and they're buying off politicians. I have no doubt that there will come a time where a Chinese Communist Party person will come to me and they will say, well, we'll help build a factory in your district, and they'll tell me this wonderful thing, but we just need you to stop being so hard on Communist China. No, not on my watch. I'm not going to fall for that. And there's a great book called Stealth War by General Spalding. And he outlines, he was a stealth pilot and then an attaché in China. He speaks Chinese fluently, and he outlines what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, and they're aggressive. They squashed the rights of their own people, and now they're coming after Americans.
You were talking about, you were talking.
It's very simple. Yeah.
You were talking about different products being made over there, and quite a few. I know that I deal in the steel industry. Yeah. Did you know 90% of the work gloves, are made in China right now? There's only one American company making work gloves here in the United States.
Well, they have no environmental regulations.
Right.
They overproduce even when it doesn't make sense. They subsidize by their government because they're just trying to keep people working. And they have this Ponzi scheme. They take in foreign donations, and then they never let any of those go out. They actually keep the money in China, and then you're like, so GM, for instance, they invest in China, and then they're like, we'd like to take that money back to America. Oh, no. Whoa, wait, what? And a lot of companies are starting to realize this. Right. They don't allow what's called repatriation of wealth back to the United States. And that's, American workers can't compete, not because American workers aren't up to the task, but because it's an unfair system, and they're not on a level playing field.
Right. How are we going to change that?
There's a variety of ways. One of those ways is is what President Trump has done. And I think tariffs in the short run make sense to show China we're serious.
Yep.
But I also think what we have to do is reduce regulation here so that American workers can compete. And that's like tilapia, for instance. It's mercury infused tilapia in these just horrendous environments is dumped into the American market. So I do think what we do is we put inspectors at ports, and if they have one faulty Chinese product that comes into that port, the entire ship is turned around and sent back to China. Do you think that those organizations will start having better quality control? If your child's toy has lead paint in it because the Chinese didn't do quality control on it, you send that entire line back to China, and very quickly, money talks. They'll stop doing that, and they'll have better quality control for one. But then also American companies will be able to compete. So,
I don't see
one of the things,
among other things. I could talk about China all night. But.
Yeah, and I want to, speaking of China, one more thing on them. One of the things, and we talked about this on our show, that really concerns me is pharmaceuticals.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of our pharmaceuticals are made in China. A lot of people depend on pharmaceuticals here to get by everyday life. How would you, maybe try to get more pharmaceutical companies to make stuff here versus China?
Well, yeah, on critical stuff, we can't rely on China. We can't play this game and so whether it's weapon systems, and what's scary, and a lot of people don't even know. So the circuit board on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, America's highest and best technology when it comes to military equipment. The circuit board is created by, it's owned by a Chinese company, the circuit board that they put in there. It's based out of England, so they say there's no security threat. That's ridiculous. And Huawei, obviously we know that 5G is the next push. Yeah. And one of the things America has done, and President Trump specifically, has been strong on this. He's told our allies, because I've shared intelligence information with the British, and they call them Five Eye. They basically have a very close relationship when it comes to sharing of intelligence. Well, President Trump has said, if you want that to continue, you will not use Huawei because it's vulnerable systems. And the British are, but President Trump has stood firm, and I would back him in that absolutely. And if you want a trade deal, Britain, no Huawei involved. And we've got to play tough, because if we don't, we will lose the country we have, and we will see China controlling us. Maybe not with troops on the ground, but with an army of cameras.
We've got people that are wanting to go into business or got a product that they patent and of course wants to get made. Yeah. Me and Byron talked about this as well. That me and Byron owned a widget company, you know what I mean, and we want to maximize our dollars. Of course, before all this went down, and of course I'd never do it now. But shoot, I can get it made in China and maximize my profit 100% or more instead of getting it made here. How can we get the American worker involved and compete with China into being able to make our widgets?
Well, I think a lot of the higher end products, Americans, we can compete on that level, and that's part of it. But here's the problem with the patent stuff. What we're doing, American companies are forced to give our patents and our trade secrets to the Chinese, or we can't operate in their environment. And so then what happens is you come up with a great idea, you put millions into researching it, and then 2 weeks later, Chinese companies are making it illegally. Well, and that's why when an illegal copyrighted product comes to the United States that has a counterfeit and is in violation of international law, immediately send that ship back with all of its products, and they will stop doing that because it'll get too expensive for them to have these super tankers going back and forth all the time. So that's one way is stopping bad behavior. That's the key. China has been operating without any kind of what we haven't done anything to push back. We just allowed them to operate with bad behavior, and finally China is being held accountable by President Trump. Peter Navarro is another great one on China. And he arresting the Huawei executive who was involved in illegally selling stuff to Iran in violation of international sanctions. We've got to hold them accountable.
Yes.
I want to just, they said thumbs up on the, hey, let's buy America.
Yeah.
They ain't American, buy America.
When I introduced a policy to prioritize buying American products in Clay County for the Clay County Commission, and so we've already done that. We're working towards that policy, but I've led that effort, and I'll do that in Congress too, lead the effort to prioritize the purchase of American goods.
That's great. What Raymond No says, Gavin, what's your stand on medical marijuana or the legalization of marijuana?
So I think two separate issues. I think medical marijuana makes sense as an alternative for, and I actually was a little skeptical originally on this, and I think there's abuses to it for sure, but there's some studies that actually show opioid addiction and use goes down if you're allowed to have the medical marijuana. So I think I do support medical marijuana. I don't support just a free-for-all of recreational marijuana. I think that could be problematic if we just, but I think over time, it's something that I'll be honest with you, I don't have a strong 100%, this is how I feel, other than I think medical marijuana should be okay. But I'm definitely going to have to do more research on the legalization of recreational. I think that's something that I'm still kind of on the fence on what was the best route moving forward. Because I lean towards a government that governs least, governs best, so get government out of people's lives. So that's kind of, but then I also know that there's some negative consequences with legalization like we've seen in Colorado. So.
And Raymond, this I was going to just get ready to ask Gavin this because us being in the military, he was asking how can we improve services for the veterans?
Well, continue to support the reform of the VA, allowing vouchers. So if you're waiting in a super long line to get VA care, like not literally waiting in the line, but figuratively, your months for care, you should be able to have a voucher to go see a doctor. And that's already happening on some level, but we need to improve that. I also think dental care is part of health care for veterans. And so a lot of veterans have dental issues and they can't get that fixed through the VA. But one of the things I would do, part of the challenge is navigating the craziness that is the federal government. And that's why I would have a dedicated staff member focused exclusively on doing veteran service issues. And so if you were supposed to get a medal that you never did, or your loved one was supposed to get something, I heard about a lady the other day, and they're trying to say she's responsible for VA medical bills from her deceased husband. And all kinds of craziness. I would have a dedicated staff member who would weekly update me on where the cases are and what's happening with all that, so that we make sure veterans get the hard-earned. It's not even a benefit. It's something that they earned. And it's ridiculous that in a free country, we send people overseas, they get named, and then they come back and in some cases are living on the streets, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of other job programs I think are important. Hiring veterans preference is, I think, a valuable thing because veterans have a skill set that's very helpful. But one of the biggest things is reforming the VA, improving that, and then also making sure that if you're a veteran and you need care, that we have a team member who's dedicated to navigating that bureaucracy for you. When you retire as from the military, of course, you get certain benefits. You'll be able to use like I said, the VA. You're able to go on base, those kind of things there. I had somebody ask me, and they wanted me to ask you this question. If they don't retire from the military, let's say somebody puts in 8 years, gets out, working, has a great job, is there a way where they can get, like, in other words, can they still use base privilege? Because right now they can't use base privileges. Yeah.
You can use the VA, use those things, can't get on Kingsley Lake. Do you see maybe trying to even up the playing field a little bit from a retired military to, just a guy that, veteran that served his time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would want to look at the specifics because I know Kingsley Lake, I've sponsored some people, so there is a way to do that. But I thought if you had served at any amount in the National Guard, you could still use Kingsley Lake. So I'll have to look into that a little more specific. That'd be probably a state policy. But yeah, if you serve honorably, you should be able to have access to the PA or the PX. Sorry, the VA, but the PX on base. So if you served, and I thought that you were able to. I'm still in, so that's something I haven't encountered yet. But I definitely can look into that and would be willing to sponsor a tweak to something to make that possible. So.
Yeah, and I'll get that answer back to you. I know that was asked. They wanted me to ask you about that.
A couple things we did as a Clay County Commissioner. I fought to create that group called Firewatch to try to reduce veteran suicide. We created a veteran parking space, and then we also, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it seems simple, but it's just an amazing way to start our meeting. We have a veteran lead us in the pledge at the beginning of each meeting, and it's a solemn moment. They come in, and we actually read about who they are, so it's a great way to recognize the veteran and their service, but it's also a neat way to just start off our meeting with a recognition of the great country we have and the reason we have it. And then we started meeting and discussing things. And I brought that effort to the commission, and it's been a really neat thing. So I'm not just a veteran. I've fought for veterans and will continue in Congress.
That's awesome. That is great news, Dave. You see, we're going to have somebody just like this young man right here fighting for us that has served our great country. Byron, that loves our great country. Our first responders back here, I should say.
Brothers in
arms right there.
So,
yeah, you got that right.
Well, when I guess you don't have arms, but well, you have arms, but not legs. But that's a whole nother discussion. But
yes, it is. Love chicken wings, by the way. Yeah, there you go. Want to talk a little bit, something that really hits near and dear to my heart when we talked about what was happening with this COVID-19 thing and our first responders and our truck drivers and everybody that's helping keep America great during this trifling time. Agriculture is a huge contributor to Florida's economy.
Yeah.
How will you protect the interest of Florida's farmers and ranchers, which is something near? I always think that the farmer gets the raw end of the stick.
Oh, yeah.
And always has to be. And I anybody that, Gavin, and I know you know this better than anybody, that gets up and does that kind of work each and every day needs to be rewarded for their efforts. And I tell you, I commend our farmers, whether they're dairy farmer or meat, whatever it is, I commend their efforts each and every day.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard work and it's volatile. So you have, the weather changes and suddenly your crop changes, or in this case, COVID, the restaurants close and suddenly your market goes away. And one of the challenges they're facing is cheap and low quality products from China. So, for instance, tilapia, or I could go on and on. But so my degree from the University of Florida, go Gators, is in agriculture. And so you let that one slide?
We're both going to let it slide.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I'm in the UF Hall of Fame with Tim Tebow, so I feel like I earned being a Gator.
I do love Tim Tebow. By the way, I love Tim Tebow. Yeah, he's a great guy.
But my degree is in agricultural communication, and so I will be a voice for farmers. That's one key thing, and then also work to simplify regulations, because that's one of the back to the regulations thing. A lot of farmers in America face all these crazy environmental regulations, all these nuances, and you have to have 5 lawyers working for you when you need somebody to help run the cattle or whatever it is. And that's a problem. So simplifying it, and then also just being a voice when the Michael Bloombergs of the world say being farmer is easy and you don't have to be that smart. Crazy. I'll be a voice to say, no, this is. Have you ever actually gone and seen the drip irrigation that's being used? Have you seen the way they protect the land? Have you been up at 5 a.m. With the cows? Have you? And the herd. Have you? And I'd love for Mike Bloomberg to actually go to a farm at some point and wander around. He'd probably get trampled.
I would love to.
I would love to see one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That'd be great.
So. Put him in the bullpen.
There you go. Did you have something on that? On that?
We're joking. We're not.
No. Actually, no. I'm just kidding. If you turned on the productivity of the American farmer, I think you could solve a lot of the problems that we have, not only here but throughout the world.
I agree.
Yeah.
It would greatly reduce China's effectiveness
around
in this country and around the world, because literally the last figures that I saw were that if farmers were allowed to actually produce what they could produce, we could feed the world 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and America, the farming base we have is one of our greatest strengths, because we aren't reliant. We are self-sufficient. China is not. China cannot produce enough food in their own country to feed their own people. So they are reliant on the rest of the world. We're not. America is pretty incredibly self-reliant from our geography, from our oil resources and energy resources, and it's a great, amazing nation. And the reason we have international trade, I mean, there are some benefits to it, but a lot of it was set up as a security apparatus to fight the Soviets, and that security apparatus is no longer needed to fight specifically the Soviets, although the Russians are now a re-emerging problem. But President Trump has said it correctly. I mean, we subsidize the world's security and trade, and what do we get out of the deal? And that's why I do believe in an America First policy. Not that I don't like the rest of the world, but we have to, the right our country should take care of our own. We should take care of American citizens. That makes sense, right?
It does
It's
make
logical
sense.
for your average person. Politicians, not so much.
That's not being selfish either.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, you get that a lot, but it's not.
When it's like the analogy in the plane, they always tell you if the plane crashes that you put on your own mask first and then you help your child.
Right.
Well, even though you love your child, you got to have your own mask first. And so America, if we aren't secure ourselves, we aren't prosperous ourselves, we can't help the rest of the world. And America has a history of leading internationally and helping the rest of the world, but we also have to balance that with taking care of our own.
I want to welcome in Connie Wilson, John Probst, Jacob Swaggerty. You probably know some of these people. Ashley Moore, also Vincent Tucker. Vincent Tucker is actually listening in Arizona.
Oh,
He's got
nice.
his own show called Z and Tuck that he does on Thursdays. So
Awesome.
he's from Arizona.
I spent some time in Sierra Vista at Fort Huachuca for some Army training, and Arizona's beautiful. Loved it.
There you go. So, Vincent, there you go. Dale Woodruff and Kim Mosley and Wendy Russell and Tony Blacks joined us. Mark Udy wants Gavin's thoughts on government forcing the use of masks during COVID.
Absolutely not. I think that it's a huge government overreach, and the science is mixed. I do think that there probably are some benefits to wearing a mask, and if you want to and choose to, then that's your choice, but I don't think government should force it. And people say, well, what about vulnerable populations? Well, they should be self-isolate, and if there was somebody who had a low immune system and they wanted to interact, I would wear a mask with them. So I'm not saying don't take precautions. I'm not saying that don't choose to, but it should be an individual personal choice. And what's crazy about this, we've all seen the hypocrisy of government. We've seen in Alachua County, county commissioner who voted to force everyone else to wear a mask, and then he's at the grocery store not wearing a mask himself. We've seen you can't go to church, but you can go riot and throw bricks through windows and you don't have to wear a mask. So we've seen the hypocrisy of this. And so I think that's why if Americans truly thought it was from a good intent and it made sense, then they would be a little more in favor of some of this. But we realize government has lied to us. Government has overstepped. And a lot of this is just virtue signaling, really. It's liberals thinking that they're going to somehow... Government's not our parents. We're Americans. We can make our own choices, and we should. So,
And that's an excellent answer right there. I know we bounce back and forth on a lot of questions because, of course, this show right here is audience driven. And, you know, Gavin, it makes it more personal.
Yeah.
I hope you like this format.
I do.
I know a lot of people do. You can interact with our audience. They can interact.
Yeah, very interactive.
And we
Hey,
can all
Kathy, thanks so much for your support and welcome. I see you just got on. So
Yes, Kathy
great
Coleman's
lady.
on. Absolutely.
And
So,
her husband, Air Force veteran, and
Hey.
great family.
thank you for your service. We appreciate
Certainly,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
On the spot with David Rodgers. I'm your host, David Rodgers. We got Mr. Gavin here with us tonight. We're in his home. And we got Mr. Byron Bagwell with his little eye there to my left, my co-host, hooking us up with on the comments. Mr. Dave Holland producing the show. Mr. Michael Heater directing the show. As we get ready to wind it up here in just a little bit, Gavin, I've got a couple more questions here, and then I want you to pour your heart out to all of our listening audience and all your supporters on what they can expect from Mr. Gavin Rollins if he is elected to the 3rd congressional seat. So I do want to give you a question here. Twitter recently introduced new additional censorship rules. Some of President Trump's tweets have also been flagged because they were said to have glorified violence and exhibited abusive behavior. What are your thoughts on last month's executive order from President Trump to prevent this kind of censorship?
I agreed with it, and it was very careful to protect free speech, but also specifically what it did is took away immunity. So Twitter loves to act like they should have immunity from people suing them because they're a fair and public square. They're equal to everyone. But they're not equal to everyone. They censor conservatives and allow tweets that are crazy from other people. And so it's not a fair playing field. The problem with big tech in general is that it's a monopoly in many cases, whether it's Google or other companies. And the problem with monopolies, I believe in free markets, but monopolies are what's called market failure, because they get so big that they become almost like a government. But I didn't elect the board of Google. And so I do believe government has a role in holding companies that have gotten so big that they're squashing the rights of citizens. I think they should hold them accountable. And with Google, we need to do that. Antitrust laws, we need to break up some of these monopolistic companies that are trying to control your life. And let's face it, they are trying, big tech is trying to control your life. And there are a lot of them are giving into the Chinese on this too. And there's a lot of communist Chinese influence on big tech. And it's a huge problem, and it ultimately will squash the rights of individuals.
Yeah.
People don't think we've done this recently. By the way, we have done this within the last 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
AT&T, right?
Southern Bell.
Yeah,
Southern Bell.
Or not Southern Bell. It was just Bell.
Yeah.
What it was, and they split it into AT&T and Southern Bell, and so forth and so on. And you can do that at Comcast too.
Yeah,
My mom calling me.
Actually, she says you're doing a good job there.
Thanks,
So,
thanks, Mom.
Excuse me, NBC.
Sorry about that. Just a couple other quick things here. I know we need to talk about the illegal immigration issue that we have and the wall. Tell me where you stand on that, the illegal immigration and of course, the wall that President
Very
Trump.
clear. Build a wall. We have to have security. Immigration is national security. We have to control who comes and goes in our country. And it seems simple. I don't know why it's become a complicated issue. If you want to come to this country, come here legally and become an American and share our values with us and become a part of this great family. If you don't love this country, you hate our values, then stay out. Don't come to this country. And if you want to come here illegally, then you can't. The bottom line, if you come into my house illegally, if you go into Nancy Pelosi's house illegally, the cops will take you away, or her private security or whatever, after you eat some of her $5,000 ice cream. But the point being is, we live in a nation of rules. It makes sense for everyone else, and with immigration, we have to abide by the rules. And here's the problem. We focus on those who come here illegally, and there are some tough situations with that, but we don't focus enough on the thousands, the millions, who want to come to this country the right way legally, and they're in line waiting, and they can't get here because someone came illegally the wrong way. And the challenge with people coming illegally is we don't know who they are. It could be Al-Qaeda coming in through the border. It could be ISIS. It could be somebody from a foreign country, a foreign agent coming to our country. There's any number of possibilities. We absolutely have to have secure borders, and every country has a right to have secure borders.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I know Mr. Michael Heater put something up there, the Dragon Slayer himself put something up there. If Seattle can build a wall, any other point is really new, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, I see Larry Peoples is on there, great city commissioner here in Keystone Heights, and great guy.
Right.
Hey, Larry.
Good evening, Larry. Good evening, Larry.
And he's officially endorsed me, too. So he's
really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. You're probably going to have quite a few endorsements after this show. We hope so anyway.
Yeah.
I know
the most important endorsement to me is from the voters.
Right.
So any DC endorsement, I'll take it. But the endorsement that matters the most to me is the average voter, the hardworking American, and that's who I'll always work for.
I like that. That's a great deal there. Dave, you got a question?
A lot of people in America have been asking this question. Is holding office a job?
I think it's a solemn responsibility to serve, and I think it's you serve for a time. And what I want in a leader when I elect somebody to office, and what I look for is somebody who is somewhat reluctant and is wanting to serve because they're willing to, but not so desperate to serve they'll do anything. And that I think that's why I say for me going to Washington it's really a deployment. Washington's basically a war zone at this point. And hopefully it won't literally be a war zone when I get there, and I know that President Trump's acted swiftly and kept many monuments safe and that type of thing. But I'm willing to deploy to Washington, D.C. to fight for our values, but Washington, D.C., I'm not going to drink the water. I'm going to drink bottled water so I don't get whatever's in the water up there. And because people go to D.C. and they change, they become a different person. They think protecting government or themselves or their own position, that's what they're fighting for. But for me, it's always about fighting for the people. And people say, well, what if you go astray? I say, my brothers will kick my butt, my family. I have people who will hold me accountable, and that's key. And ultimately, the voters will hold me accountable. So I think it's an opportunity to serve, and it's not about you. It's about representing the people. And a line Congressman Yoho used to use, which I love, when people would come to the office, they'd say, "Thanks for showing us around your office." He'd say, "It's not my office, it's yours. It's the people's office. I'm just here for a season."
We'd be a lot better off with a lot of our politicians. If a lot of our politicians thought in that same realm in that same way, wouldn't they? So, Byron, you got another question for before we start our close a little bit?
What he's typing up is what is great.
Okay, the House of Representatives voted along party lines to make D.C. the 51st state. Oh, I forgot about this one. Yeah. Trump and Senate says no. Your thoughts?
Well, so D.C. is already it's a unique system. No, I don't think it should be a state. It's crazy. We'd have a whole bunch of additional crazy liberals, and we have enough of those as is. But no, D.C. is already a federal city, and Congress should step in and actually keep it safe. One. Right. The fact that the mayor was not allowing the police to protect the White House and other things is insane. But no, I don't think it should be the 51st state. I think we
Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Well, they voted on that, so
right.
I don't really have a strong
but
position
you're talking on any territory
to become in the 51st state. Okay, I guess maybe she was
okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's a good one. I don't have a real strong position on it one way or the other. I think if they did certain things that we can look at that. I want to look into it more.
But to a broader aspect, if a certain group, organization, entity wanted to create Springs County in North Florida, Puerto Rico, the 51st state, the community of Bagwell, Florida, wants to incorporate and then take away. What's your take on states' rights versus community rights versus of the larger picture as far as groups organizing themselves into the formal government entity that we have?
I mean, I think that if they do it the right way and they go through the process, then Springs County should happen. That more power to them. I believe in states' rights. I mean, states are an important function, and that's why we have one of the wonderful things about our country is we have innovation because states compete against each other. And we are the United States. We are a country of states that became a nation, not the other way around. Right. And so, one other real quick thing on the job, whether I feel it's a calling, really, ultimately, and I think, like firefighters would say, it's not a job. It's a calling to serve. It's a calling to make a difference in your community. Now, you got to get a little bit of pay to get some McDonald's every once in a while, whatever you eat. But throw a few bucks, to help pay for stuff.
Right.
But at the same, it's ultimately a calling. I could do a lot of other things that would pay the bills, but I feel called to do this. So.
Good deal. If you are elected, or when you do get elected, however we want to put that, you seem like you're a great candidate so far. Everything. You've answered all the tough questions that our viewers and we've come up with. What is your, in other words, let's say, I know you said you're going to boots on the ground. I like to call it. Hey, you're ready to roll. The whole military term. So
now I'm excited. I want to go to Seattle. Let's take this.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I was just going to say. I know
I'm following you.
You're ready to go to Seattle. But let's say the day we're at Gavin Rollins' let's see, party. Inauguration party, let's call it. We're there next day. What are you going to do?
I'm going to sit down with my team and I'm going to say, these 20 pieces of legislation, let's co-sign them, let's do this, and let's get to work. And the caseload that Congressman Yoho probably had from previous constituents, let's figure out how to have metrics and get these taken care of, and let's make them happen. And let's figure out where veterans' needs are on this packet and that packet, and let's start making it happen. And I want weekly updates on where this is at, and let's get to work. We don't have any time to waste. You can see the sites as you're walking in between government buildings to get things done. But we're not there to drink the Kool-Aid or sip the champagne or whatever. We're there to work.
So we're not going to drink any of Nancy Pelosi's $5,000 scotch bottles of stuff?
I mean, I'll take some of her ice cream. That sounds pretty good.
Gotcha. got you. I got you.
I wouldn't.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we know what you're talking about. I know you
eat
might
ice
have-
cream.
That's exactly
But
right.
people are suffering. They won't let people go back to their work, and then Nancy Pelosi's opening her freezer and says, "Let them eat ice cream,"
Right.
essentially, and
Right,
she
that's
has
what-
$10,000 ice cream.
Yeah, exactly right. Do you have anything else there, Byron?
Not any questions.
Okay.
It was something about it that Noah had said about not the 51st state. The capital shouldn't be a state for reasons which Mr. Bagwell can better explain than I can. I think what he's talking about is it's actually a federal.
City.
City.
It's a
City.
unique structure.
It's
yeah.
a unique
District.
structure,
Yes.
and he knows from basically teaching
68 square miles. There was Maryland and Virginia both gave, and it became the 10 square miles, and they gave a little piece back. But the 68 square miles, Charles L'Enfant created the Paris-style open Broadways, and then went from there. And George Washington laid the cornerstone, and you had the three. It's kind of neat. It's actually from, if you look at the cross section of the White House, the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Washington Memorial, it actually forms across the National Mall.
Yeah.
Right.
I've heard that. That's exactly right.
A lot of neat symbology.
It's a very amazing thing to see on Google Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what he was trying to say is you really can't do that. You could give parts of the land back to the states that originally gave it, but you couldn't actually create a state out of it because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's individual entity. It's actually a part of the federal government. Right.
Yeah, and
what
they
he's
still
trying to
they
say.
have 3 electoral votes that always go to Democrats, but they get to vote in presidential elections. So the only thing they don't have is a member of Congress, but they have all of Congress right there.
All right, a couple of questions before we wind it down,
Sure.
and I'll let you
Rapid fire.
So
real quick,
okay.
Like my favorite color.
We're gonna give some easy.
what are your views on the 17th Amendment that allowed us to vote for senators?
So that very, very nuanced question. I like states choosing their senators. I think that would have given states a better balance, and like Obamacare would have never passed had state legislators been able to. I don't know that we'd get to wind back that, but the way our system is set up is brilliant because it's checks and balances and it dilutes power. Think about like putting a whole bunch of spicy hot sauce on one spot of the rice. It would be too spicy unless you love hot sauce. But if you want it to be spicy but not too spicy and spread out, you mix it, you dilute it. And that's what they did with power. Too much power concentrated in one area destroys. And so our founders diluted it among the federal, state, and local level, and they also diluted it into 3 branches. And those checks and balances pulling and tugging against each other, it's like crabs. If you throw one crab in a bucket, it'll climb out. If you throw 2 crabs in the bucket, they'll pull each other down and they'll keep each other accountable. And that's the branches and the levels. And this back and forth in this system, it holds government accountable so it doesn't squash your rights. It doesn't allow consolidation of power. So I like I wish we could repeal the 17th Amendment and allow senators to be selected by the state legislature, but I don't see that happening, but I would be in favor of it. But that's a very random nuance. I love it.
Yeah, that's
History guy, obviously.
Oh, yeah,
that's one of my hot buttons with our government because what we've done is we've diluted our republic by doing that.
Right.
And I'm in favor of absolutely the electoral college also. The electoral college is a brilliant system because it allows big states and small states. If you didn't have the electoral college, the president would campaign in LA and New York, maybe Miami, and a few other big cities, and that's it. And middle America would be completely ignored. And the electoral college is a balancing out. It's a check in this great republic. And we are not a pure democracy. We are a republic, as we've talked about. So built on a constitution.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about the electoral college.
Yeah.
You've been hearing about people wanting to get rid of the electoral college, and I know how you stand on that. I think that would be a big mistake to get rid of the electoral college.
I agree.
Like you said, people like Kansas and some of these don't really have Oklahoma. How about Oklahoma and those places like that really wouldn't have a say in what the outcome of the presidency.
Well, and the rules are set, and then Democrats always cry if they don't win, and it's like saying, well, I didn't know a touchdown was 7 points. They beat me, and I got a field goal, and they got a touchdown. It's like you knew the points before the game began. So Hillary cried about the electoral college after it, but if Trump had known it was going to be a popular vote, he would have won. He would have just gone to big cities and campaigned there, but he knew it was the electoral college, so he went all over she didn't. She ignored Wisconsin. She ignored Michigan, and to her shame, she lost it. So.
Right. Right. All right. Where do you stand on Israel-Palestine issues?
I stand with Israel, and I think that if any two-state solution should be, we have to be very careful and make sure Israel's security is at the heart of that. I had the chance to go to Israel in 2015. I stood on Mount Hermon. I made a snowman actually on the top of Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights, and it's critical. And I'm glad that we finally recognize that the Golan Heights is a part of Israel, because it's a critical key piece of their security. And the only reason it's even a part of Israel is because Syria tried to attack them, and so they took it over and then have kept it because they don't want Syria to attack them again. So it was won during a war that Israel didn't start. But and I could go on, but we have to stand with Israel. They're a democracy. They're an inclusive bastion and oasis in a volatile area. And our partnership with Israel results in a lot of innovations too. Israeli bandages, various other medical breakthroughs. They have a lot of tech companies that have created some great things, and then also things like I just drew blank as to what the vaccine. They're working on a vaccine and might be far ahead on the vaccine. We'll see. But Israel is a wonderful place. I love visiting there, and we have to stand with our friends Israel. And if they come up with a solution, and Israel has time and time again offered a solution for a two-state solution, and they have offered 98% of what the Palestinians are asking for, and the Palestinians walk away, because what the Palestinians want is the destruction of Israel. And if I'm negotiating with you and I say, I want you dead and I want me to live, well, that's not really a negotiation. That's hard to make a
negotiation out of that.
That's where if there are people, and President Trump's two-state solution was brilliant. Here's what we're offering. Take it or leave it. You have 5 years to figure it out. Brilliant negotiation, and we'll see what happens. But
speaking of Israel, I've been to Tel Aviv. You got to Tel Aviv?
Yeah, we flew into Tel Aviv.
Okay,
to Ben Gurion Airport, and then we went to Jerusalem and Sea of Galilee. I jumped in the Sea of Galilee on New Year's Eve. It was cold.
Did you go to Wailing Wall?
It was
amazing. It was amazing. But oh my God!
Well, and there's just such a sense of it's incredible. It's hard to describe.
It is hard to describe. Yes,
it's amazing. Of tension, but beauty of, and what's interesting to me is in the way they do agriculture. You'll have orange trees right next to corn, right next to all these. It's amazing, and beautiful place.
It is. You try not to go to the shops,
and it's a diverse group of people, and that's the thing. It's Arabs and Jews are coexisting peacefully within the state of Israel, and the news just shows you the worst elements, oftentimes, unfortunately. So
you got a hyphen?
We didn't. How was that?
That's Coach State. Port City. You would have loved that too. If you get a chance.
I'd love to go back. So, and the food was great.
Oh my gosh!
I'm getting hungry now.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry too now. Yes, it is.
People talk about Israel and Palestine.
You can't be hungry.
Israel and Palestine, and people forget when you talk about the relationship between Israel and Palestine. Israel has existed for thousands of years.
Right.
Palestine's only existed since the end of World War II.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not been a nation.
Yeah.
Right.
For long. So you're asking one country that's existed for thousands of years to give up their territory to a country that has not.
When they were offered a state in the original creation of the new modern state of Israel, the Palestinians were offered a state, and they said no. Israel said yes, we'll take our state. And then all the surrounding Arab nations invaded and attacked. And they had to fight a war for their own independence. And then a couple years later, in '67, you have the 6 Days War, where multiple ones were preparing to attack them. And Israel said, "We're not going to wait for you to kill us. We're going to take out the Egyptian Air Force," and they kicked their butts. Then the 6 Days War, and then you have the Yom Kippur War, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and they're surprise attacked, and they're fighting for their lives. And so the Israelis, each time they do that, they'll take land and then in many cases give it back to the people who attacked them, as what happened in the Camp David courts.
Right.
And they gave the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt. And to its credit, Egypt has been a responsible partner in all this, and abiding by the land for peace. When the Sinai Peninsula is given back to Egypt, they have been a peaceful coexistence with the state of Israel, and they officially recognize it. So there's hope, there's progress, but it's definitely a tough situation. So.
All right, a couple of things. Let's go on the political trail a little bit. How can some people like our viewers get a David Rollins sign to put in their nice front yard there, all landscaped?
Yeah, great question. It's guaranteed to increase the value of your home.
Absolutely.
So GavinRollins.com is my website. It's very simple. We kept it simple. It's not for this or that. It's just my name, GavinRollins.com. It's ROLLINS, like Rollins College. And so you can send us an email there, get updated on what's happening. You can follow us on Facebook. I maxed out my friends, on Facebook, the personal friends, 5,000. So now you have to I can't accept new friend requests. Maybe I'll go through and get rid of some crazies in there. But you have to like the page, and then you can send us an email, and we'll get you a sign. And we also want you to be a part. We call it the Team Rollins family. It really has become a family, and we'd love for you to be a part. And is this my final closing here?
Oh, we y'all want to answer a couple of things. No, we're going to throw you a couple of little things. Yeah, a couple little just. So you're a Florida Gator.
I am. I did undergraduate there, and then went to the University of West Florida and got my master's degree in education leadership. So I actually did that online while I was deployed and teaching. So I've kind of pushed three paths: teaching, education, the military, serving in the military and the National Guard, and activated at different points in that, and then also serving as a county commissioner in Clay County in my second term. So
I know, and I probably should have asked this at the beginning of the show, but I wanted to kick it off, man. I see we were ready to go. We hit it and got it rolling.
Like if I am in Congress, day one, let's get it
rolling. Rolling Rollins.
Exactly.
There you go.
Like
Rolling
should have
Rollins.
brought you in for my
There you go.
team. Yeah.
There you go. Rolling Rollins.
Slogan.
What do you like to do for hobbies? What do you like to fish? You like
These
to golf?
days I don't get a lot of them, but I like to cook. I'm not a great cook, but improving. There's something relaxing about focusing on cooking. I love to go for a run, sports. I played soccer growing up, and love playing soccer, swimming in these lakes. They're amazing. And some are cleaner than others. I don't swim in Lake Keystone, but I do love some of some of the lakes, and reading, and I do write short stories and different things. I like to write and hang out with friends. Go to church. We've got an opportunity to worship in different churches. Nice. People have invited us to go to different churches, and it's been really neat to see how different people worship in different areas, whether it's a country church or the Rock in Gainesville. And the Rock in Gainesville is kind of like a rock concert, and it's awesome. But then you also have some other ways of worshiping, and it's neat to see the diversity within the Christian family. And so a lot of different things, but I am excited about after August 18th, maybe getting back to a few of those hobbies.
You're a golfer? You're a golfer?
I don't do a ton of it. I do enjoy it when I do, and I'm either really good or really bad. So one I'll hit it and it'll go straight and it'll be great, and then another it'll go in the trees. So
okay,
it's like 4, right?
4. That's it.
So, how about you? You do?
I play. I'm not bad. Bogey golfer, probably. It's probably about the best that I can get. But I'm trying to get these guys to go. Maybe we can go one day as well.
Love it. Yeah, let's do it.
You got any engagements coming up in the near future where you're going to be speaking, or where some people can see you? And how can they see you? Can they do it through Facebook Live, or do they have to go to the event? Give us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things this obviously has been an amazing experience in getting to share and go in depth on the issues.
Right.
Also, Ward Scott, you guys know him, the Ward Scott Show. We did a virtual fundraiser, and we had people from different perspectives sharing why they're supporting me. So we had a professor who's Chinese American, and it was talking about my stance on standing up to communist China. We had my former battalion commander who selected me for company command and explaining why he had done that in leadership in the military. We had a UF student who shared her perspective, why she was supporting me. We had a pastor who I met on the campaign trail, Pastor Jones, and he shared why he was supporting me. And so different perspectives on our volunteer coordinator, Jeanette, who's amazing, and different perspectives on why people support Larry Harvey, Putnam County Commissioner.
Right.
He talked about serving alongside of me as a commissioner. He serves in Putnam, and Clay, and how serving the community is what it's all about. So I encourage you to watch that. We also have a 30-second ad out that's pretty hard-hitting, talks about our nation is under attack and we need to fight back, and that's what I believe. So there's a lot of different ways. Events coming up. I do not have every aspect of my calendar memorized. So, but I know there's in Newberry they're having a forum. There's some virtual forums. I think the League of Women Voters is doing a virtual forum.
Right.
And what I would say is this. Don't just believe whatever the candidate says. Look into their background, research where they've stood on issues for years, because anyone can pay a lot of money and make you think something. And a lot of people are trying to buy this election, like Bloomberg. They're trying to Michael Bloomberg this election and dump tons of money in and buy it. What we're doing is we're going out there the hard, old-fashioned way, grassroots, one vote at a time. I'm taking phone calls and talking to voters. I'm going to doors talking to voters. I was at a ladies' tea/card game. We had some tuna fish sandwiches in Newberry. I love it. It's great. You meet real people, and that's what I know. This DC doesn't control this district. DC doesn't get to decide this district. This district is who represents it's going to be decided by the voters, and that's what I'm confident they're going to make the right decision. So
That's awesome.
One more time with the name of the show. Did you just
the
mention
Ward Scott Show?
the Ward Scott Show?
It was the Gavin Rollins fundraiser. You can YouTube it. It's also we'll have it on our website. If we don't, we'll put it on there. You can see that, and then share this show. I really encourage you to share this show because anyone can give a 30-second reverse speech. They can say, "Well, my consultant told me to say this, this, and this," and they can. But when people ask in-depth questions, when they throw you on the spot, and I didn't know he was going to ask about the 17th Amendment, but I know what the 17th Amendment is and the history of that, and the progressive movement that wanted to have direct election by the people, but the challenge that's moving farther away from the Constitution and this idea of balance and structure. You can't make that up. That's where and that's what I would encourage you to do is really vet the candidates. And I don't think there are bad people who are running against me. I just think they have different sets of backgrounds, and there's a little bit different experience that they'll bring to the fight. And that's where I think that one quote I always have loved, Winston Churchill said when he became prime minister, he said, "I felt as if I had been walking with destiny, and that all my past life had been preparation for this moment and this trial." And I feel somewhat like that the experiences I've been able to have prepared me for this trial that we'll be having as a nation and serving in Congress. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for welcoming to On the Spot with David Rodgers. I have Mr. Brian Bagwell, Mr. Dave Holland, Mr. Michael Heater with me, and of course, our candidate here, Mr. Gavin Rollins. First of all, from our hearts, I want to thank you for inviting us to your home and for you coming on our show. Wealth of information, I've got to say. I tell you, you really hit all the tough questions that our viewers asked, that we asked. You brought a lot of information to the table, and I hope everybody was listening to what you said, so when they do go vote, that what you just said earlier, that they make the right choice on the candidate they want. Make sure that you're listening to what they're saying. Research their background, and I believe if they research yours, I believe that they'll find exactly what you were just saying this whole show. So as we get ready to close, I'm going to give Gavin Rollins a chance to look into that camera and tell everybody what Gavin Rollins is all about and what you can look for during this election campaign and when primary and voting comes in.
Well, I remember when I graduated high school, my parents gave me a plaque, and it said on there, it was a Bible verse, and it said, the one who serves or is in leadership should be like the youngest, and Jesus was talking about a family, and the one who serves. And Jesus was the greatest example of servant leadership. He literally washed the feet of those he's the Son of God, but he washed the feet of those he served. And servant leadership is what I believe in. And I'm not going to D.C. because I need a job. I want to be famous or be somebody. I'm going to D.C. because I want to work hard and serve this district that I love and grew up in. And whether I have the opportunity of representing you in Congress or not, I hope I have that opportunity. I will continue to fight for this country, whether it's in the classroom as a teacher, whether it's in the community as a leader, or whether it's in a combat zone as a military officer. I will continue to fight for this country because this country is worth fighting for. Thank you very much.
And again, that's Mr. Gavin Rollins. Ladies and gentlemen, you can follow him on Facebook. I'm sure you can message him. All those 5,000 friends that you got. We're going to have to eliminate a few so we get some more in there.
Yeah,
but there's a ways to get in a hold of him. You need a sign. You always you heard also how you get a sign as well. You can reach out. On behalf of my squad, Mr. Brian Bagwell, my co-host on Tuesdays, on Saturdays, Mr. Dave Holland, Mr. Michael Heater, our director, Mr. Mitchell Gunner, who couldn't be here, who would have loved to have been here with us in St. Augustine with his family. My name is David Rodgers. God bless you guys. Good night. You can catch us on Tuesday night with On the Spot from our regular studio. Again, thank Mr. Gavin Rollins and for letting us be in his home. And here he is, your candidate right here for the congressional, 3rd District congressional seat right here, ladies and gentlemen. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend.